And we are live.
Hello.
Okay, I'm with Diane and Jan of the new band Octarine Sky. Is that pronounced that right?
Yes.
Octarine.
Octarine.
Like tangerine.
Like tangerine, but Octarine. Okay.
Tangerines.
8 tangerines.
So why the, I guess a lot of people want to know why the new band and the origin of the name.
Jan, do you want to take this one?
Sure. The band originated out of the realization that this project was much more collaborative than any of the other things that first Diane and then Diane and I released as Potter's Daughter. It was a situation where there wasn't just one arranger and one composer saying, well, here is a song, you must now play it exactly as written, and then there's 16 bars where you can take a solo. It was much more of, all right, well, this is the framework of the song. Let's send it to Simon, who's a master at filling up space in a very hip way.
Right.
And then sending it to Guthrie and say, all right, well, there's this and this much space left. Fill whatever you like. And then coming back to us, all right, well, there's a little space here that needs to be filled and a little bit here. That whole thing just wasn't Potter's Daughter anymore. That was its entirely own thing. That was it had taken on a life of its own, if you will. And we decided out of that, plus because the sound is, even though it's definitely Diane, definitely me, it's very different from anything we've released so far as Potter's Daughter.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying it's really heavy.
Very heavy compared to what we've done. It's obviously full kit in the fullest sense of the word full in Simon's case.
Right.
And a lot more moving parts in the sense of it's much less linear. Not that really Potter's Daughter was linear, but it's even less linear now with Octarine.
It's more heavily orchestrated.
It's more heavily orchestrated, less space, more dense, more sound wally. And then the name Octarine Sky is a reference to a book series that Diane and I are both huge fans of called Discworld by Terry Pratchett. In the series Discworld, which is an absolute joy to read, highly recommended to anyone who hasn't read it yet. It's such a joy. And I don't know if the audiobooks are on Audible anymore, but they used to be, and the narrators were also brilliant. The word Octarine in Terry Pratchett's Discworld is the color that is present when magic is around, when magic is being practiced.
Oh, okay.
So that's where it originates from, as does quite a few other little Pratchettisms that we found that we fit into the record. So that's where the inspiration is.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. The name Terry Pratchett sounds very familiar. Now, he did some of his stuff was made into TV series, I believe.
It may well have been. I must confess I don't really watch television all too much.
Right.
So I'm not a database on what has been made into TV or not.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah, well, I noticed that a lot of especially progressive rock bands draw their inspirations from books and other literatures, including TV and movies, and it's always interesting because I think a lot of fans, when they find out where your source material is, a lot of them will go out and seek that source material if they hadn't already done so. So it's like,
I don't think anybody will be disappointed if they seek out Terry Pratchett's Discworld, because it's awesome.
It really is great.
It's so funny.
And how did you hook up with Simon and Guthrie? Because those are two big big names, you know.
They
One,
sure
one,
are.
one is a more recent big name. Guthrie is more recent, you know, in the past, I want to say 20 some odd years. And Simon's been around since what, the 70s, you know, so it's like you got two, I want to say two major players, you know.
Yeah,
How'd you
we
get
feel
them?
really lucky about
We
that.
do.
We sent Simon a email and just a cold, what do you call it? A cold call?
Yeah, it was a cold
type
call.
thing.
We were both friends with Simon on Facebook, and we had come to really appreciate Simon's talents through Toto, of course, because who doesn't love Hold the way he plays Rosanna and Hold the Line? I mean, he's amazing. But we really got to appreciate him through Hiromi, what he did with the trio project with Anthony Jackson, who is, as a bass player, one of my greatest heroes, and Hiromi is just one of the greatest jazz pianists of our time. Seriously, she's amazing. We're both massive fans of Hiromi and the trio project, and we got to heard it and we were like, who is this drummer? Well, it was Simon, and he's lived rent free in the back of our heads ever since. And we like Diane said, we cold called.
We did. We sent him an email and briefly outlined the concept for the project and sent him 3 recordings of the works in progress. And he got right back to us and he said the music sounded very interesting to him. And he thought that it would be a challenge, especially, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the album yet, Ron, but there are some repertoire on the album that's taken from the modern classical music genre. And so that really appealed to Simon as well. So
and that whole area of taking modern classical music and adapting it has been common language in Potter's Daughter as well. I mean, we did that with both the 4th movement of the Alberto Ginastera's Piano Sonata on the blind side, as well as the choral arrangements of Morton Lauritsen's music.
right.
And now we're doing it with we did it with the 1st movement of the same Piano Sonata. 2nd and 3rd might be coming, not judging it at some point, but we did that. And then we also had a composition by our very good friend, long time of more than 20 years, friend, Julia Schwartz, who is, I called her in a radio show yesterday, a mad scientist, and I don't think there's anything that better describes her. She's a genius of unmatched caliber in how she writes. It's incredible.
She's incredible. So and Guthrie also really liked her piece, which is called 7 on the album. And so we and the way we got in touch with Guthrie was the same way. We sent him an email and described the project to him and sent him some recordings of what we had done so far on the project. And he also agreed to do it. He also liked the music. So yeah, we feel very honored to be able to have both of them on this album.
Well, that sounds amazing that they were so easy to get in touch with. I think maybe 20 or 30 years ago, trying to get in touch with, those type of players would have been like, oh, you have to go through, so many different channels and sometimes you may not be lucky in getting them. I think nowadays since there's no real record labels anymore, musicians can easily get in touch with each other. Well, that's cool. And I gotta say with Potter's Daughter and this that you guys don't sound like anybody else, and that's for me is a good thing because I'm honestly tired of a lot of the prog bands following a certain formula, and whether it's vocally where male vocals are trying to sound either like John Anderson or Peter Gabriel, or musically where the keyboardists are trying to sound like, Wakeman or Emerson, basses are trying to sound like Squire and Geddy Lee, things, it's like, I like that, there's very few times you get originality, and you guys are in that boat. I mean, you don't really sound like anybody else out.
That's
in the-
awesome. Finally, we found our people,
That's
right?
exactly what I was going to say. It's funny because well, especially when you set off to revitalize Potter's Daughter back in, was that 2016, 2017, before
Yes.
we then recorded The Blind Side in 18. We didn't know where we would fit in because Diane had all of this brilliant repertoire she had written, and it was for piano and voice.
Yeah.
It was
Right.
there were no bass lines, there were no drum lines, there were no guitar lines, anything written except piano and voice. And with the way Amit arranged our first album, Amit Chatterjee, the great guitar master, we really didn't know where we would fit it.
Right.
We didn't know if we were going to be world music because we had so much influence from Indian classical music and other Eastern classical music. We didn't know if we were going to be jazz fusion. We didn't know if we were going to be prog, even though I think we have our feet in all of those genres. Very
Oh yeah.
Yeah, when if I can just butt in, when
Please,
we first recorded The Blind Side, it was not with any marketing in mind. It was music, and that was why we decided to retain the name Potter's Daughter at that time, because I had started Potter's Daughter when I lived in New York City in the 90s. And so a lot of the material, the majority of the material on The Blind Side is from that time frame. And I kind of just wanted to archive that. And I had recently reconnected with Amit, who is an old friend of mine from New York. He's not from New York City, but we knew each other. At that time, we were both living in New York City. And that was before he went on the road with Joe Zawinul. And Amit really encouraged me to do that. So we just did The Blind Side for ourselves, really. And afterward, we were stuck with the job of trying to figure out where it might fit. And so with good luck, we found the progressive rock community, the Prog community, and they really welcomed us and embraced us with open arms, and we just love the Prog community so much.
We do, and I think a special shout out in that realm also goes to Nick Atona from Melodic Revolution
Absolutely,
Records.
who's really been a spearhead.
He
for us.
has, and he's obviously a name that is known in the prog world as just being somebody who isn't afraid to take chances with bands, and he took a chance with us, and
Yeah, he
we wouldn't be where we are without it.
Yeah, I noticed with him, he on his label, he has just a nice wide range of styles. So it's like, I mean, for some people that are like really truly into progressive rock, they kind of scratch their head as to why he because he has just about everything under the sun on his label. So it's like, and that kind of goes back to like the 70s, the 60s and 70s, where there was so many wide ranges of music, and it just seems like as the decades rolled on, it's like a lot of styles were just kind of bumped out, in favor of the more flashier stuff, and it's like that's what a lot of times when I listen to Potter's Daughter, I kind of feel like I'm being kind of transported back into the 70s, but without, how some of the bands are trying to sound like other bands. It's like you guys kind of would fit in with those bands that everybody is trying to sound like. that makes any sense, you know.
Very
uh,
happy to say thank
Thank
you.
and
you.
and that you know, because it's like it's one thing for a band to have the chops to sound like you know, let's say like a Genesis or ELP, but then it's another thing when a band can have the originality where they'll fit in with those guys, but as you know, for lack of a better word, appear rather than a, you know, another word, clone, you know, because you know, like I was saying, the 90s were like a huge time for these clones where everybody was trying to sound like, you know, Genesis. Yes, you know, the more popular progressive rock bands, and they didn't have their own identity, which is what you guys have. You have your own identity, and then for you guys to come in thinking, not marketing yourself, I think in a way that was a very that was a very good move. I mean, I'm sure at the time you weren't sure if it was, but I think in hindsight,
You're right.
it was a good move. It was a good move because then, you know, you were focused, you know, on your music, not trying to sound like anybody else, you know. And
Yeah. And you know, it's just been such a crazy journey, a wonderful, crazy journey. And so this new album, Close to Nearby, Jan really add his voice so much to the music. And that was, you know, just as he was saying earlier, that collaboration. It's just such an interesting progression for me personally. It's very interesting to see how things, and of course how Simon and Guthrie added to the overall sound. You just can't understate that. So yeah, it's been a wild ride so far.
now, we got someone that's in the chat room that says, uh, Robert Schindler. You know, he's in there.
Hi, Robert.
He's always I think since I started this series back in November, I think he's been in just about every time coming in, and he was also wanted to remind me that you guys are playing Prog Star.
Yes, and we can't wait to see you there,
Yes.
Robert, and hear you again. He's an amazing keyboard
He
player.
is.
Boy.
We had the pleasure of playing him outside of Prague Sock I want to say last year, as if
As
COVID
if
didn't
for what?
help. Yeah, if there was last year, but the last Prague Stop, shall we say?
Yeah,
Yes,
we
he's
had the pleasure of playing with
incredible.
Robert. It was really amazing.
It was.
I like that what they're doing is they're offering people to come in person to see the bands, and then also offering, you know, the streaming, you know, because, you know, two reasons, the obvious, you know, with the pandemic going on, and then the second is not everybody can afford to fly in and then to pay for, you know, for lodging and everything. So I think this will make it easier for people that is from the farthest reaches of the planet, they can tune in and see the bands. And I think that is something I believe if not every festival, every prog concert should look into, because you're going to reach a wider
Absolutely. I mean, it
au-
might be the way of the future, right? With the pandemic and all of that. But yeah, Ann and Tom are working tirelessly to make a great festival, and we're so looking forward to playing. We're going to be playing on Sunday night at 11:30 with our friends Dark Beauty, and that's going to be really fun because we're kind of merging with each other. Tell Ron.
Well, we're sharing a rhythm section, i.e. myself and the fabulous Mark DeGregory.
Yeah, wait to hear Mark Boy, yeah, I
he's
mean,
he's
killing
amazing.
it.
He's amazing, and I just love working with Mark so much because he's so easy to get along with, and he's so
great.
easy to just when you're working with musicians, you're always having to try and explain to them what you hear, which is
Right.
always the difficult thing. Mark just gets it.
Yeah,
He
Mark just gets it.
So
He's
it's great.
amazing.
And Brian and Liz are from Dark Beauty are also sitting in with us,
And we're
and
sitting
we're
in with
sitting with
them.
them. So
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
it's gonna be
Yeah,
a
Lou's
great
playing
time.
with us too.
Yeah, Lou's playing
Yeah.
with us too. Lou's playing with us too. I didn't even know that. That's wonderful.
That's cool. That's cool. So it's like an merging of the two bands. So so
We're gonna alternate sets, so, you know, most of us will stay on stage, but the material will switch from Dark Beauty to, we're doing that as Potter's Daughter and then Dark Beauty and Potter's Daughter. So yeah, we're really looking forward to it.
that does sound fun. The last time I went to a festival was in 2012. I'm kind of overdue. It's just health things. I don't see myself getting back into going to those festival until maybe 2023, 2024, somewhere in that area.
Yeah,
Because the main thing is it's expensive for traveling, first of all, and then the second thing is hotel rooms. The when I went to Ross Fest, that's what I went to. I had to share a room with someone because I think it was like $180 for the room, and it's like,
yeah.
and I think I spent maybe 5 minutes in there, you know. So it was kind of almost like a place for me to store my luggage and to change or to shower.
Absolutely.
So it's always good
Although,
if
you know, one thing we're playing also at the end of October in Tampa at Progoween, Prog on the Ranch. And that's actually an opportunity for people who don't maybe want to spend so much money. Of course, there's the travel if you're
Right.
not from the Tampa area. But Bill and Devora Goldman, they really go out of their way to help people find affordable lodging, and you
Right.
can camp there, and they have RV parking there, and
oh, that's
so
cool.
yeah. So we're going to be playing there with, again with Mark DeGregory, and yeah, we're really psyched about that. So that's also a really great festival.
Oh yeah, it's. I like that these little festivals are kind of emerging again, because I mean we lost Nearfest and I'm not sure what's going on with Prague Day. Obviously because the pandemic they weren't able to do anything. So I don't know if they're planning on returning next year or not. Because and then of course on the West Coast we had I want to say it's the original one was Prague Fest, which started in 1993, and then after that dissolved in 2000, we had Prague West for a couple of years, and then for a couple more years after that we had Cal Prague, and then
Wow.
south of the border we had Baja Prague. So,
Cool.
so it's like I mean we had the West Coast had that, but Baja Prague was like the closest thing to how Nearfest was, because at the hotel, which was really cool, is they had bands playing in their patio set. So it's like you have bands during the day, and then you had bands at night at the theater. And during the day, almost everybody it was held in Mexicali. Everybody from the city would be showing up. They had the different taco vendors would be there and everything. It was just like I think like what a true festival you like, where it's like everybody's mingling, And it was just an amazing thing,
When you could mingle, right?
right? I, you know, I'm still a little weary about some events that are happening. You know, the one that I was like very pleased to hear is a few months ago, maybe in the early part of summer, when the Foo Fighters did a concert, it only allowed people that were vaccinated.
Yeah, that's
And
what Ann and Tom are doing for Prague stock as well. You have to have proof of vaccine in order to get in. I mean, it's a tricky situation. Everybody wants to feel safe and everybody wants to feel protected and everybody also wants to get out and hear live music and have fun. So
exactly.
I think they're doing a really good job of trying to keep everybody safe and yeah.
Absolutely, and I'm very pleased and thankful to Ann and Tom that they took that step and ensured all of our safety by requiring vaccines, because
especially for you
no other
guys,
way to do it right now.
especially for the performers. I mean, it's like, I think as an audience member, we gotta feel that, okay, do I want to get my favorite band that's up on stage sick just because
Right.
just because I wanted to see them? Because if I get them sick, they're out of commission.
That's right.
So it's like, why do that?
And unfortunately, being a musician is a job where self-isolating at home is rather difficult to do. So putting us out of commission by getting us sick means that, well, we can't even work together.
Yeah.
It's not even just we can't perform live, we can't go to the studio, but we can't work on more material because, well, how do musicians compose? They compose together. That's how we work.
Exactly. Oh yeah, I mean, I've seen, a lot of various ways of what people did during the pandemic. People, sending their files back and forth to do something, which, like you said, you need to be in the same room so you can kind of feel off of each other. If the keyboardist plays something, then the guitars or bass gets in, and the drums, you get. I mean, obviously, you got some of these bands that have members on different continents, and that makes it difficult to be in person. But if you're, let's say you're on the same coast, you got a way of kind of getting together with each other, and
Definitely the best way if it's possible.
It is.
yeah. Friend Cheryl's in the chat room
Hi, Cheryl.
now, and the thing that I mean, I understand. I mean, one of the people that I interviewed months ago, Robert Berry, who's going to be playing at Rossfest. Now, his last one, album he did, the 3.2 album,
Mhm.
he did it all in the studio, but then he said he took the advantage of, now he has this time to learn some of the behind the scenes on how to master and mix and things like that, and plus also he did everything on that album, and it's like it sounded like a full band. I mean,
Right.
people weren't paying attention to the liner notes or anything like that, especially nowadays with streaming. No one, you can't really, you don't get liner notes in the streaming, so it's like you wouldn't know that it was just one person. And so it's like you get different things on how musicians cope during the pandemic. And I couldn't imagine, because I have a lot of musician friends, how, especially if they weren't in the same city, that, you know, now they have to, you know, when they're quarantined, it's like, I mean, they could talk to each other, they can Zoom each other, but it's like, you know, it's just not the same, you know.
That's one thing though, I have to say that Guthrie really nailed
Yeah.
it, because obviously he's in England, and
Yes.
so we were unable to you know, play live in the studio with him, and he, you know, just picked it up. I mean, both
Although,
Simon
yeah,
and
although we
Guthrie.
with especially with Guthrie, there was probably 2 or 3 weeks there where we texted back and forth, probably, you know,
Yes,
2 or 3 hours every day,
yes, there was
which
plenty of text.
was, of course, wonderful, but also intense, and it could just be avoided if you're in a studio together because you're working off.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely, it's so much easier to understand.
Oh yeah, because you know, it's one thing when you're talking to someone or texting someone, but it's another thing, you know, you get to see their facial expressions, you know, as to what they're meaning, you know, because that's the I guess the plus side of having Zoom is like you get to see the other person, you know, and kind of get the gist of their what's going on. But it's, you know, but even better in, you know, in person. But I don't think we're quite at that point where we can really do a lot of, you know, unless you're in the same city or same state or even, you know, same region, you know, especially, you know, like you said, he's Guthrie's from England, you know, it's the, you know, the not so much the travel, but you know, the screening and everything now with the
Oh
COVID.
yeah,
I
it's a
mean,
it's a big project now to travel internationally. Where and I mean, a lot of tours are still being canceled, and so yeah, we're not definitely not all the way back, and I hope eventually we will be.
Very soon, hopefully.
oh yeah, you know, I was reading somewhere that Europe is not letting Americans in or something like that because of, I guess, how high our infection rate is. And even though, you know, a lot of, you know, there's a lot of, I want to say the responsible people that have been vaccinated. Um, and the ones that believe in, you know, in science, you know, that those people have been vaccinated. But, you know, I understand that. So it's like, you know, Europe seems to be like out of the picture right now for a lot of bands coming in, not so much even from, you know, America, you know, probably Canadian bands and other bands, they probably don't want them in there. So, but you know, I do look forward to the time when I'm reading, you know, this or that tour, you know, where, because I remember, you know, Facebook before the pandemic, you know, you always heard about some tour going on, you know, or some festival, whether it's in the United States or abroad, you know, always heard about them. And then, you know, the only ones now that you know, you hear about is, you know, here in the United States is Rossfest, Prog Stock, and then the Edge. You know, we got those ones going on. But that seems to be the only ones that are of that caliber that are going on. It's like nothing else is really going on. Nothing, and I haven't heard of anything going on the West Coast. Seems to be the Southeast. It seems to be like the area where everything's happening. You know, and then as far, you know, Prog Stock to New Jersey, you know, nothing above New Jersey's happening. So it's like, you know, I hope for the time when, you know, we get some more festivals happening, you know, because like I said, I know a lot of musicians, a lot of bands that, you know, that are itching that they want to get back out there, you know, to play some of their music that they've created during the pandemic. You know, some have even created like 2 albums worth, you know, and probably gonna, maybe next year we'll probably see like an abundance of releases next year, you know. You know, I mean, probably too much where it's like people are gonna go like, well, which one do I buy? You know,
Exactly.
you know, which is, it's good, you know. I noticed since in the past 10 years, we have more choices of what to buy out there than before. You know, it used to be very limited, and also it's easier to get things nowadays because especially from, you know, international artists, because before it used to be, you know, the difficulty of the exchange rate, and you know, then them sending it. I mean, nowadays it's crazy because of, you know, in our mail system, for something to get from England to the United States takes close to a month sometimes.
Mhm.
And it's like, I mean, I had someone that I was talking to a few months ago, and he sent me his CD, and I got it a week after we talked. And it's like, and he'd send it, and that was about 3 weeks. So it's like, it's but for the most part, I mean, especially if they make deals with people internationally to have hubs of places in, you know, their CDs being sold in different continents, so it's like it makes it easier for the fans to get to it.
And less expensive, because I mean, the shipping is outrageous right now for international shipping. But that's one thing that we're really happy about is close to nearby. It's not up on the site yet, but it will soon be available for pre-order in the United States, in all the music retailers, but also on Amazon UK and Amazon.de.
Right.
So it will be available at affordable shipping costs.
Right. Well, I notice also too, you guys have it up on pre-order on deep discount.
Yes, I mean, it's going to be available at most retailers. It's just a matter of time. It takes a certain amount of time for it to get uploaded.
Well, that's good. That, you know, plus also, you know, the quicker way for people to get stuff nowadays, you know, especially when, like, you know, like was it Bandcamp that you can buy the CD, and I think some of them even offer a digital copy of it too. Kind of on the way that Amazon does on certain things you know, certain CDs you buy, they give you a digital copy of it. I mean, that way you can listen to it, but it's like, to me, there's no nothing better than having CDs or LPs, you know, either one of
Right.
those, you know, just idea of holding it in your hand and reading, you know, liner notes and things like that while listening to the music. It's just an experience that you can't duplicate. You know?
Right.
It's
And just that little crackle and hiss
When the needle drops.
drops
Yeah.
on the vinyl. Yeah, there is nothing
That
like
magic
it. Yeah.
moment. Yeah, we're also going to have limited edition vinyl, and there will be an art book accompanying it. Tell about the art book, and Armin.
Well, the art book is a piece of merchandising that we decided to do because we're focusing a lot of our merchandising on art as well that goes along with the songs. And we've worked with a bunch of different master artists so far in getting each song a single piece of art, which will include the text of the song, the lyrics, as well as this full high definition print of the art in the book, and a short biography photo of all of the band members and all of the artists. And it's just another way that I think we can connect with the music while we're listening to it. And what we hope is, just like you said, it can be something people are reading while they're listening to the record. It can be just something, just that little bit more insight into the band, and to the thoughts behind the music, and to the images associated with it. As well as the cover art itself, we've made certainly no secret of the fact that it was drawn by, or is painted by, one of the greatest artists of our time right now, as far as landscape and fantasy landscapes and such, as Armand Cabrera. We're very honored to call him a very good friend of ours, and he's just absolutely stellar. And prolific, seriously. And he's included, as well as being featured as our cover art and as our backing art on vinyl. He's going to have some of his pieces shown in this art book as well.
Yeah, I love the idea of bringing different disciplines together, like art and music, or literature and music, or dance and music. I just think it's so, it makes it even richer,
and
the experience.
And just as there are arguably 8 different styles of music on the record,
Right.
That has 8 different songs on it, each piece of art has been created by artists who are vastly different than each other. Another featured artist we have is the German-Spanish artist Constanze Vega, who is an absolutely incredible modernist artist. Stunning work, stunning visual work, and also is these pieces, they may look small on a page, but in reality, some of them are 8-9 feet large in square. They're very large. And we've condensed these onto the page as well, which again shows off another bit of differentiation between each piece and each artist and each train of thought that led to the piece being written.
And we also, at the beginning of the project, we had a crowdfunding on Indiegogo, in which we featured 2 young artists in a scholarship section of the crowdfunding on Indiegogo, Parker Dubiel and Grayson Crisanda, and their artwork will also be featured in the art book as well. So yeah, it's an interesting span of, these extremely talented young artists to, master artists who are already, working professionally.
And have been
well-established professional artists.
Yeah, that's, most of the, I guess, newer bands and artists wouldn't go to this measures of creating booklets, like featuring art nowadays, because, it seems like a lot of the focus, at least for younger audiences, seems to be more towards streaming side. So it's like that they don't need that. But so it's nice when bands and artists put out, an art book to go with their music, or, or it maybe even like a storyboard to go through, kind of tell the story of if it's a concept album, they have that, or just even if it's just like showing pictures, or going to the how some bands have like behind the scenes videos of the process of the making of, I mean, where you take that time out to do that, because that your fans are going to appreciate this, and I love it when bands put out something elaborate, because it looks it looks so good to, like when I was a kid, I didn't have that many records, but when I had a record, I always loved putting it on and then opening up the booklet, big booklet, and seeing all, reading about what's going on. And then nowadays, I think a big plus with the internet is if people have those Wikipedia pages to read some of the things and, of the process, and then how these albums were received by the critics and fans. I personally prefer a fan's point of view over a critic's because
Me too.
the critic, because I used to years ago do CD reviews, and I did it from a fan's point of view because I thought there was too many journalists / critics out there that were not really getting, the message of the music. They were just talking about all the technical stuff of it, which I'm sure it's nice when someone can talk about the equipment that you use, but then I think it's nicer if they can talk about how the music makes them feel, and if it hits you in a certain way,
I mean, when it
maybe.
comes down to it, that's the most
Mhm.
important thing, isn't it? How it makes you feel. If it makes you feel something, then the musician has done a good job.
Yeah, yeah, that I really think I think that's, judging from everybody that I've talked to, is that's what you guys really truly want, is to know if the music touched your audience. If it, whatever way, maybe a certain song hit someone that they had a certain life experience, good or bad, or they just were just feeling down, and this song lifted their spirits up, or it's like, maybe mirrored, oh, that happened to me, and the outcome was very similar. Or it's like, I think, at least for me, music has, especially in the past 5 years, has really given, actually a little longer, has really given me a focal point of sanity, and both,
I think it's helped
both.
all of us through quarantine, hasn't it? Oh
It
gosh,
really,
what would we have done?
you know, I'm thankful in a way with Facebook that a lot of people were talking about, at least my friends were talking about music and about albums that they bought. And then I'm like going, well, I never heard that one. So it's like, I go and investigate, and
Go check it out. Yep.
yeah, check it out. And then, you know, I only use the streaming sites and YouTubes and stuff like that to sample to see if it's something. Okay, if, let's say I get a recommendation, I want to make sure that they're not recommending it, that they're recommending it to me personally, or recommending it to everybody. So I want to make sure that it's something that's going to speak to me musically. I mean, so it's like I use it like that, and 9 out of 10 times I wind up buying it. So it's like, I can't. So it kind of kept me grounded during the pandemic. As I'm sure everybody it in some fashion.
I mean, it was a huge part of every music lover's day, I'm quite sure, because we aren't used to being quarantined, are we? Oh, that was something.
Well, I don't know if you noticed, there was a a lot of people that were going on to the Facebook Live, and I had a friend of mine. He went on and just him and his piano, and he was taking requests and singing, I think for sometimes for hours. And I have another one of my friend who he broke the record on interview time, 3 hours and 45 minutes.
Wow.
He just kept on going. He's very laid back, but he another one of those multi-instrumentalists that I think something's in the water in certain parts of the LA area that, there's sprouts a lot of these musicians. And it's like, talking with him, and he did not only Facebook Live, but he did something on YouTube. He did something on Instagram, just any place that he can go, just, because he said he's a musician by trade. So it's like, that was his livelihood. So he had to make money somehow. And
The way we are.
That's how it is. Yeah.
and so I know how a lot of people are itching to get back out there, to play their music that they created during the pandemic. And
Absolutely.
and I think a lot of people, especially at that Prog stock, they're gonna, with that, I like that idea, and tell the people that put it on, thank you for doing about the vaccination, because, as much as it sounds like you're trying to just, I don't know what the word is, but where you're just staying away from other, like you're just being inclusive of certain, yeah, you just be, of certain people. And it's like, but I think their job is to protect the artist, that the artist can come back another day to play live. So it's like, it's their responsibility as promoters to do that. And okay, they're gonna lose a lot of customers, but
Actually, Ann and Tom said that everyone was very supportive. It was a tough call because, of course, it's so involved to put on a festival like that, and they need every ticket they can sell just to make it work. And so it is a tough decision to say something like that vaccines are required. But on the other hand, they said that they almost 100% were met with support and encouragement about that decision. And I think everybody feels safer. I mean, we all want to go and we're so looking forward to going, but nobody wants to put their health at risk.
Exactly.
Nobody should. Not the fans, not the artists, not the organizers, not the staff. We're grateful that everybody can be there, that made the choice to get the vaccine. And those are the people we want to have.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that's a good thing. I really hope that other festivals are going to take that, that plan, and at least whatever happens the rest of this year, and possibly maybe into next year, because we don't know when this thing is going to be truly over. I think it what do you call it? It kind of like went away and then kind of came back, and it's like, I'm still here. I didn't go away. I just kind of hid behind the bushes here, for a little bit while, and it's like, I mean, I have a family that, that they have to make sure back in LA, that they have to make sure that they're healthy. So it's like, I have a cousin that he goes clubbing, and he's part of this one club out there that it's a mandatory that they be vaccinated or they can't get in, and I think that that's a business motto that should go into effect, especially if they want to have customers.
Mhm.
It's not a good thing to find out that you have your club open or whatever, and a week later you find out it was an outbreak.
Oh, yeah.
Because basically that club is gone. It's done for. So it's like, if you want your club to have business, you make sure that everybody is healthy.
That's right.
Unfortunate for a person such as me is, being immunocompromised, I have to be extra cautious, even with vaccinated people, because so,
Sure.
but I'm hopeful, like I was telling you off camera, next year is going to be the year that I'll be bouncing back and getting back to my normal,
Well, that
so
sounds great, Ron.
and I'm hoping maybe in 2023 seeing some of the bands that I've spoken to.
You better come and see us.
Oh,
We'll send you a ticket, Ron.
I would like to see you guys, because I can when I listen to your music, I can kind of envision it live, and then I've watched some of your YouTube videos where you have some live stuff, and then I've seen a lot of your YouTube videos of you on the piano alone,
Yes.
doing different cover songs, which it's kind of interesting to hear some of those cover songs just on the piano alone.
Yeah, it's different.
I mean, because some of them, you try to figure out how are you going to work it onto just one instrument, and it's always neat to hear when they can do that. Whether it's a piano or a guitar, acoustic guitar,
Right.
and so it's like so the new album comes out on
November 5th.
November 5th.
So then nice in unison there. Yes, November 5th indeed.
That's a nice fall release,
Yeah, we had hoped that we tried to push the release ahead for Prog stock, but we ended up, Simon mixed the album together with Jan, and they just did such a great job and took such care and went back over it so many times. And after we had spent so much time on the music, we didn't want to rush the mixing and the mastering. We wanted to take care with that too. So we felt that it was better to put it back a little bit and do it right.
Yeah.
That's the best thing, because I know that in the past there's some bands that like rush the mixing and everything, and then they look back and they go, well, maybe we could have just waited maybe a couple more weeks or a month, and I think the fans of your music, they can wait, because they know that it's going to be good. So
Thank you.
you can wait for things that are good. It's like I don't appreciate when bands rush things, and then it just kind of sounds sloppy.
That's right.
It's like,
and we can assure everyone that maximum care was taken
It was.
in both the composition, the arrangement, the playing, the mixing, and the mastering. And also shout out to the incredible Jason Mariani who mastered the record. Of course, Simon who mixed it.
Yeah,
They both did incredible jobs behind the console and were so great.
yeah.
Now, are you in the future ever going to play with Simon and Guthrie live? Because I'm sure
It has
some of
been
the people,
discussed.
Yeah.
We already have discussed plans for another album with Simon. Guthrie, we would love to work again with Guthrie. Unfortunately, he felt that he is so busy right now with Hans Zimmer and with the Aristocrats that
right,
he didn't feel like he could commit to another project. But
That doesn't mean, excuse me, that doesn't mean that it's a for sure no.
right,
right,
May very well be another featured artist at some point soon.
right.
But right now we only know of our ideas, and we were very grateful to have Simon see a lot of things the same way we do.
Absolutely, and we have talked about performing live, and Simon also would be interested in performing live with us. But of course, right now, things are so up in the air with tours, some of them going forward, some of them being canceled. And of course, Simon is a well sought after musician and has a very busy calendar. So we hope to do some shows, and we've discussed it, and we are all interested in doing it. And we'll have to wait and see.
that'd be pretty cool. I mean, but also too, it'd be, if you did go with us when you went with the second album, if you couldn't get the Simon or Guthrie again, that if you had other people in mind, I don't want you to say it because, you don't want to tease the fans too much, but like if you had someone else in mind, it kind of like a revolving type of a thing where, you guys are the core, you have Octarine Sky as one entity and then Potter's Daughter as the other one, where, it just depends on
The
what
material.
the material as to what it will fall under.
Absolutely.
So you have that for you, because it's like I was telling you before, it's like I like when bands, if they're gonna do a side project or another band, that they're not a mirror of what the main band is.
Right, and I think that was a main reason we decided to form Octarine Sky, is because Potter's Daughter has always been kind of folk prog or jazz, kind with acoustic drum set on the blind side, and also This Winter's Child was it wasn't acoustic, but it has an acoustic overall sound to it. And yeah, and Octarine Sky is just so different than that. It's really heavy and orchestrated, and yeah, so that was one of the main reasons we decided to do that with the Octarine Sky.
Yeah, so like I said, it's a good thing that it's like if something doesn't fit in your original band, it's nice to be able that you can create something else that it will fit into, because then I kind of think you would confuse the fans of, in a way, kind of confuse them as to, well, wait a second, we're used to you guys sound in a certain way. If you're going to do something different, maybe, like, I mean, you
Yeah, that's what we thought. That was
you guys did
exactly
it.
what we thought.
You guys did the perfect thing of doing that. It's like, okay, well, we got different ideas that don't fit with the original formula, so let's do something on the side so it doesn't not so much confused, doesn't clash with
That's
your
right.
So it's like that's a fantastic idea of doing it that way, that people don't you know, and plus also you get to hear different, you know, visions of what you're thinking, you know, and when you're creating your music, you know, that, you know, I was lucky years and years ago to be in a studio. Well, it was my friend's garage, but be in there with them while they were creating their music. And it's like, um, they were just three-piece, you know, the basic guitar, bass, drums. But just to be in there and listen to them play and create stuff, you know, the guitarist would do a couple riffs and then the drummer get into it and then the bass and that. And then what shocked me once is they all looked at me and they go, "What do you think?" And I'm like going, you know, "I think it sounds great, you know, what you guys are doing." And it was that experience of being in the studio with a band, even though they weren't like a big band, but still, you know, just to hear them creating stuff from scratch.
I think that was one of the things that for this album, Close to Nearby, was so fun. And it's that collaborative approach was that, you know, I had the songs in just maybe a very simple form, and then, you know, Jan took that and Jan arranged everything on the album. And I mean, when I would hear his idea, I was like, whoa, that's really cool. And then, you know, when Simon added his part, it was like, again, it just like grew so big. And then Guthrie on top of it. I mean, it was just so cool to see the evolution of the idea. It was really fun. But Ron, I hate to say it, but I think we're going to soon have to go. We have
Okay.
we have some other obligations today, I'm
Okay.
afraid.
Well, thank you both for taking the time out to talk to me. You know, I
Oh,
really
it's been a
appreciate it.
pleasure.
it.
We always love talking to you, Ron.
And I hope you guys have a great time at Prog Stock. And what was the other one down in Tampa?
Prog on the Ranch.
Prog
Prog on the
Ranch.
and have fun with that one too. You know.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We will.
And I like again, I appreciate you guys taking the time out to talk to me.
It's our
It was
pleasure.
our pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Okay, well, I will talk with you guys soon then.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good, Ron.
Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
You too.
Take care.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.